Application specifications. So specifications are what we as programmers use to create our applications. And usually, when it comes to specs, a business analyst and a designer or an architect have sat down and created something that the programmer can understand and work from. And this is just another one of those gray areas where everybody does things a little bit differently. So I've seen specs come in the form of an email, with a bunch of paragraphs and bullet points in it, and then I've seen specs that are very standardized and come in printouts that have everything from the project name to the name of the feature to the estimated time to complete it, how they want to integrate it in the software, how it should look and feel, and all that good stuff. But I can tell you from experience, the best way to go about specifications to get everybody on the same page is diagrams. Diagramming and prototyping is one of the most powerful things in the design phase, and when it comes to these specs, because reading things, everybody interprets what they read a little bit differently. Where creating diagrams, it's right there, plain and simple for everybody to see and everybody get it to get on the same page. So that's why I have Microsoft Visio right here. This is actually on my local computer. It's the trial version I downloaded from Microsoft's website. So download it. There's a free trial available if you want to get familiar with it. And the reason I use Visio here is because it has built-in support for UML, the Unified Modeling Language, which is just a language that really just has a bunch of shapes in it, grouped accordingly, that we can use to create all sorts of different diagrams. We can create component diagrams, database diagrams, network diagrams, flow charts. There's lots of different things in here. So this is a great tool for programmers to just diagram their thoughts, diagram their systems and their applications, and just give a little bit more to specs. Now let's jump into the outline and look at what we're going to be covering in this nugget. We're going to start with translating requirements to specifications. If you remember, I mentioned in the very first nugget in this series that we are translators. We are translators between humans and machines. Well, now we're taking this to another level because we need to translate what the user wants into what the user gets. And the best way to do that is to for our own safety and our own peace of mind is to make sure we understand what the user wants by getting it out on paper and having everybody agree upon it. So we'll take a look here at the process of translating requirements to specifications and kind of the different physical tiers here that we need to worry about. And then we'll look here at translating specifications to software. And we're going to do this by learning a little bit here on the UML and talking about use cases. And then finally here I'll show you how we can work with mockups and prototypes, because these are just great ways to get everybody on the same page as far as the interface is concerned. How far as the look and feel of the interface and all your screens, whether you're building a website and trying to map out what all the web pages within your web application are going to consist of and how they should look and feel, or if you're developing a Windows application, how every form and window within your application should look and feel. Alright, let's start with a brief look here at how we can translate requirements to specifications. So really, when we're in the requirements gathering phase and we get all these requirements down, we brainstorm about them all with the user, and we get everything that we can possibly extract out of the user's head or the customer's head, the stakeholders, whoever we're developing this for, onto paper. How do we organize these thoughts? And you can start by organizing them into three different areas here. User requirements, where we can describe the goals of the user, what they actually want out of the system, and how they'll be interacting with the system. System requirements will describe the capabilities of the application, and then the functional requirements describe the behaviors of the application. So we can group those into these three areas and start to make sense of all of these requirements. And right off the bat here, this is where diagramming can become useful, because you can start taking all of these requirements and putting them into visuals. And we can use things like use cases. This is considered a use case, where we have what are called actors, use cases. And think of a use case as just a something that you can do, something that an actor or a user or a process can do on the system, like an add product, or set options on the product if they were to add a product into their shopping cart. Check out. Think of things, actions that would take place, and those would be considered use cases, right? So we can start at a very high level, just documenting all the things that a user can do on the system. We can also do things like create network diagrams for all those non-functional requirements, things that you know, physical layers and boundaries of the application, how users are going to access the application. Is this going to be an intranet application or an internet application? Because those may play into how things are developed here in the application. And then you can also start breaking things out and visualizing your class hierarchies and your class diagrams here for your object-oriented programming portions of your application here. Things like, do we have products? Depending on what we're developing, we're probably going to have a product class. Are we building this for users that are customers are going to purchase things? Well, we'll probably have a customer object. Are we going to create an order object? So we can start creating and mapping out what we would think all these classes are going to be. And one of the cool things we're doing here is we're actually defining the layers for our application. We're defining the physical layer here that just defines the application's boundaries, all the components, where they sit physically, on the network or on the internet. And then we've got the logical layer, which is just going to define everything that makes up the application that we'll be developing and designing and working with. And then we have all the behaviors of the application, all the things that we need to cover in order to make the application functional. All right, so that's really how you get things going and translate requirements into all of these different diagrams that will represent the layers of our application. Now let's start with use cases. I just want to jump into Visio here and give you an idea what use cases are all about, because whether you're creating them for somebody or somebody's creating them for you, you'll probably come across them sometime in your programming career. So it's good to understand how they work, and they're very easy. It's just a great way to get a high-level look at all the operations that you'll be defining within your application. So let's minimize whiteboard and head over to Microsoft Visio 2010. And when we're in here, if we scroll down here, we have all these template categories. You have them for business. If you want to do things like organizational charts and charts and graphs, brainstorming. There's all kinds of stuff in business, and it's nice how Visio breaks them out into category for you. I won't get too far into it because this isn't a Visio nugget, but I certainly could because it's a cool piece of software. There's areas here for network diagrams if you want to create your network diagrams. But we're interested in the bottom here in software and database. So if we click on that, here's all the different areas that we can choose from, all the different diagrams we can create. We can do a conceptual website just to define the architecture and kind of a high-level view of all the pages within our website. You can do data flow diagrams, enterprise application here for defining all the different layers of your application, the physical layers and boundaries. Program structure if you need to map out memory, flowcharts. The one we're interested in here right now anyway is the UML model diagram. So we're going to specifically here be working with use cases. See this? Use case. That's one of the big ones. You can also create, class diagrams, component diagrams, deployment diagrams, lots of stuff that UML can represent. So we're just going to hit the create button down here. And what that'll do for us is kind of give us a blank piece of paper here with the grid behind it. And then over here we have all of our shapes. So Visio pretty much just runs off of shapes. And I'm just going to bring this Model Explorer down here a little bit. But we've got all these basic shapes in here, and if we want to go down, we want to actually scroll down here to use case, and now we've got all the use case ones. And the big ones here that you're going to be working with are the use case itself. This is going to be the circle. Think of this as kind of like a process. An actor, which you could think of as a user or anything that will interact with the system. Doesn't necessarily have to be a user. I'll give you an example of that shortly. Communication, this is just kind of your relation or your association as we call it. And then a system boundary. So let's take something like, something that everybody should be familiar with, like eBay, for instance. eBay is a popular one. And if you think about, what's involved with eBay, well, I can think of things right off the bat. We've got buyers and sellers, and both of those would be an actor. We've also got PayPal. There's another actor. So those could be three actors that we could put right on our diagram here. Let's just get three actors out here. And then we can double click on one here, go into the details. Let's just call this one the buyer. Let's call this one the seller. And let's call this guy down here PayPal. So once we have our actors defined, now let's define some of the things that they're going to do to interact with the system. Well, what do people need to do when they interact with eBay? Well, number one, they need to create an account, right? Let me zoom in a little bit so we can see these. We don't have a lot this isn't a big use case, so we can definitely get away with zooming in and working with the small space here. There we go. And one of the things I can think of again is create account. So let's just call this use case create account. And this would be something that they both do. So we could draw a line here that says, you know what, this actor uses this. This actor, oop, wrong way here. There we go, uses this. So both of these individuals, the buyer and the seller, will need to create an account. What about some specific things here? Well, a buyer will probably need to place a bid and purchase an item, right? Something like that nature. So we could add a couple more use cases over here on this side. And one we could do place bid. Down here we could do purchase item. And now we could say that this actor uses these specific cases here. There we go. Like that. Now let's add some for the seller over here. Let's go ahead and just add a use case up here. We'll call this, how about create item. And we could add another one below this one. Let's call this one ship item. Alright, and then obviously here, the seller actor is going to use these items in order to do what they need to do on the site. Alright, so there's a very basic setup. Now, some other things we could do here is if we were going to interact with PayPal, purchase item would actually do something like this. We would probably have a make payment, and instead of the purchase item using this, it would actually extend into this. So you could use an extends to represent that, and then the make payment will actually use PayPal to make the payment. Alright, so very simple use case here, and you can set up the system boundaries here too. This is kind of neat. If you do this, we can say this is our system right here. Since PayPal is an outside source, we could do something like this here. And technically, you know, make payment would be on the outside. It would probably be our function within here somewhere, but the actual payment process would be handled by PayPal. So this would be considered our system up here, system boundary, and we could add one down here for external sources. So again, just very high level here. We're not doing any sort of details. We're just trying to give and get visuals for what our application is going to consist of operation-wise. And that's really all there is to it. You can see there's really not a lot to work with here as far as our models or our shapes here when it comes to Visio and UML, because you really only have a use case, an actor, system boundary, communication point that's used, you know, to communicate between systems. In fact, we could probably put another system boundary here and then put a communication point between them, since that's what we're doing here. And then other than that, really you have uses, extends, and then all these other ones are just for grouping. Interface is good for reuse, like we have here. Our create account, both of them use it. You know, we could create an interface in that case to extend the functionality of it if we needed to. But you know, very simple to create these use cases, and it's really here just to give someone an idea of what they're looking for as far as operations within a system goes, and how they communicate with you know, the individuals or processes within the application. So something else we can do is create mock-ups and prototypes, and these are a great way to make sure that everybody is on the same page. In fact, if we head over to our whiteboard for a second here, you know, if you don't have Visio available to you, a great way to create a mock-up is to get a whiteboard or a pen and paper, because you can draw this stuff out. It's a nice low budget way of doing things, and you can get the development team all on the same page. You can, you know, send these mock-ups to a client to say, hey, is this what you're looking for? Before I get into it and actually create you a prototype, I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. You know, how do these look? And you know, it's just a great way here, again, a great low budget way to get everybody on the same page as far as what the expectations are when it comes to the interface, how things are going to flow and function. So if I were to create a login form that went to a main form, say there's only two forms in the application, if we were developing a Windows application, I could say, hey, how does this look for a login form? Maybe we'll put your logo over in this area somewhere. You know, what do you think? And then, you know, they can draw up their version of what they would want. And then say, hey, here's our main screen. Here's what it looks like. We've got a tree view over here with, you know, the data sliced out. And then you click on an item in the tree view, it'll load up the list. You click on an item in the list, it'll load up the details. And then you can save it or, you know, do whatever you need to do here with the data. Now, another way of doing it is breaking out Visio and creating a diagram, a prototype in a diagram, and it'll look a little more professional. And especially if you get the hang of Visio, it's a lot easier to modify something that isn't stuck on paper, obviously. So uh, that's one of the benefits here of using Visio and diagrams. You can always come back to it, make changes a lot easier than you can by redrawing everything up. So if we minimize whiteboard, head back over to Visio, scroll down to software and database, and at the very bottom here is the wireframe diagram. And if we hit create, you see we will get all of the controls and stuff that we can use to build a diagram that looks like an application. And now what's neat about this is you can keep things very simple, or you can get very detailed, very complex, and virtually create exactly what you want it to look like. And you can even skin it appropriately, and maybe use the color scheme that you want to use, the fonts you want to use. And just to give you an example here, let's get a window going. I'll hit the dialog shapes, and in here we have application form. So if we just drag this on, let's just create a simple login form here, and we'll zoom in a little bit so we can see what we're working with. And let's just make a little small login form, something about that size. And another nice thing about doing this in Visio is you can keep it very simple and just simply do wireframes. You don't have to get too pretty or complex, or you can get complex and integrate and kind of create and mold your own exactly what you're going to use as far as fonts go and color schemes. And if you have skins, you can put skins on them and really make it look exactly like it's going to look. So it's really nice that you kind of have that flexibility. In fact, just to give you an example here, let's go up to dialogues and let's create a simple login prototype. So I'm going to, in dialogues here, you can create a dialog form or an application form. Let's just make our application window here. All right, we'll zoom in a little bit, a little bit less than that, and let's just, since we're making a login form here, we'll make a nice small one. There we go. And now we can zoom in a little more. There we go. So we've got a basic window here, and you can just double click to give yourself a title here. So we'll just call this login for my application version 1.0. All right, and then we can start dragging some controls on here. So let's go down to controls. Let's add a label, for instance, right about here. Text box here next to it. We'll size it, and then if you want to copy and paste this, we can just highlight them all, the whole thing. I hit Control C to copy it, Control V to paste it, and now we'll just push it down a little bit. And there we go. We've got our username, we've got our password labels and text boxes, and we can just start typing in here username. Right, something like that. And we can position it accordingly. And then this one will be password. Same thing here, we'll just position it. There we go. And now we could add some buttons on here. We need a login button, right? So we'll maybe a login and a cancel button. Something like so. We can give them a little bigger of a size here. Something like that. And then we can also do things like maybe we want to allow the user to register an account from here, right? So let's add a hyperlink on here. We'll just call it mycompany.com/register. We'll hit OK, and then we can just name it here by double clicking on it. And how about say register? Or let's just call it create account. There we go. Something like that. We could size this. And then maybe if they forgot their password, we'll want to do the old, forgot my password thing. So let's just copy and paste this, and we'll call this get password. All right, something like that. Looks good. Separate it a little bit, and we'll just name this one forgot password. And we just need to size this a little bit. But there you go. See that very simple mock-up login form. And just to finish this off here, if we double click on here, we can take the text out of here. Like so. We could add login here. This one can be cancel. And then you can even do things like this. If we right click on the button, we can set the state here. We can set this to the default, so when they hit enter, it'll automatically default. So we can kind of give that visual. And as I mentioned here, you can set your fonts and your settings and all that. If you right click or just double click on it, you can see that this will kind of fade in a little bit here. If you hold your mouse over, you'll get the rest of it. And you can set the text on it, the color, and anything, the font, the sizes, all that good stuff. So you can get very detailed if you'd like to create exactly what you're looking for here. Even with the background of the form itself, if you click on the background here, you have all this stuff, all of these formatting options that you can do. You can insert images, You know, so again, if you have a skinned application, you can insert in your skin here, maybe that you created in a graphics application into the background here to really make it professional and give it the look and feel that you're aiming for. And you know, once this mock-up is approved and they like your design, then it can come time to do a full-blown prototype and put some functionality behind it. We could, you know, very easily put this together in Visual Studio, just put a little code behind it to, you know, kind of demonstrate what a login process would look like and what form it would take you to without actually going to a database and validating a login. That's the whole point of a prototype, is it's really just basic functionality to prove the concept. And you know, another thing I do want to mention is you have these tabs down here, so you can keep adding pages. You could add more forms if you wanted to mock up some more forms within your application or more pages within a web page. And another thing I want to mention here is if you don't see any shapes in here that fit what you're looking for, you can click this More Shapes and you have access to all the shapes in the Visio library. So you can go through each category individually and it'll add this shape toolbar into this toolbar on the left hand side here, so you can, you know, work with virtually any shape you'd like to that's inside of Visio. You can find shapes online and go on and on. So this is just a great tool for creating visuals when it comes to the specs of your application. Alright, so in the CBT Nugget, we took a look at application specifications. We started off here with just a look at, you know, how we take requirements and make sense of them and group them accordingly, and how we can shape these requirements into specifications and create diagrams to get everybody on the same page and just make sense of them for ourselves as well here. The big one we looked at here are use cases and prototypes and how to create and work with both of them using Visio 2010. I hope this has been informative for you, and I thank you for viewing.